This filter is crazy.
Oh, no.
Oh, I'm just looking through the things while you wait. I think we should. Wow.
Oh, wow. Okay. Welcome to Community Cuts, live from Brooklyn, New York. We're in the heart of Brooklyn, 732 Washington Avenue at Salon Leahing, between Prospect Place and Park Place, home of the professional barbers, professional beauticians. We're here live from Brooklyn. I got my host here, Donnatella.
Hi. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited you're here too as well. So this is home. So every week, every Friday at 7 o'clock, we do a live from Salon Leahing. We're asking for people to come here and visit the beauticians as well as the barbers. They're excellent people, excellent barbers, excellent beauticians. So we're going to be talking about different things out of Brooklyn. So Donnatella, how was your week, Donnatella?
Well, you know what? This feels like deja vu, actually.
Okay.
This week was very interesting. I think instead of us talking about really serious items, let's flow, and it's called Talk Back, right? And we're just going to talk about those things that happened this week, whether they're political, personal, small business. My week was a bit like a roller coaster.
Okay.
Would you like me to elaborate?
Oh, yes, elaborate. People are waiting to hear your elaboration. Yes.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
So let me start from a small business perspective. And I'm going to tell you something that really happened, right? So if you're a small business owner and you have payroll, the way that you do your payroll, there are lots of ways, right? So some small businesses, we're just barely making money. We never really organize how we pay ourselves. Maybe if you are an organization that employs people who have all their papers, right? They're probably on a W-2 of some sort. But we know in a lot of industries, you tend to have some people that you're paying cash for whatever reason.
Right.
And you typically want to use a 1099 form, right? To ensure that you keep track of those individuals' funds that are going in and out. And it really helps with the taxation. And so when it comes to payroll, there are lots of services you can use. Well, during the pandemic, I did a partnership with ADP, right? And ADP is a internationally known company for payroll. If you have a corporate job, more than likely your paycheck is being processed by ADP.
Correct.
Right? So what's interesting, I had a hiccup with one of my small businesses. So I have a couple of LLCs and one corporation. And when you have a corporation, you are required to file your taxes quarterly, whether you are working and making money or not. And unfortunately, in 2023, I did a revamp, a rebrand for one of my businesses, started gung-ho January 1st of 2023, all excited. And around February, my biological father, because I'm part of a blended family, right? My biological father was having a little bit of not feeling well, right? And so in March, I did a demo for one of my clients, well, several of my clients who needed to do payroll. And in that demo, I showed them how easy it is with ADP to have a software downloaded on your phone where you can pay yourself and you can pay your employees. You can decide if it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or quarterly. And so I ran one payroll for March of 2023. And then all poof, went a little crazy, and I halted my business, right? Had a conversation with my ADP agent and said, hey, we need to pause my payroll because right now I'm not going to focus on my business. I'm focusing on my family. And later that summer, had a conversation with my dad on FaceTime with my brother. He wasn't feeling well. And I remember in this conversation, we wanted my father to go to the hospital, but he had a primary care visit that was coming up soon, right? And he was like, oh, and this is the problem with good looking people and melanated people. When you look at us, you can't really tell what's wrong with us most of the time, right? And unfortunately, melanated people also do not like to go to the doctors. And I have heard, not sure what the statistic is, but I heard our brothers really don't like going to the doctor, right? Some of you do. So remember, this is not a blanket statement. But in that conversation, I remember my brother saying to my dad, we wanted him to go to the emergency room, right? And my dad was like, "Oh, I have a appointment in a couple of days. I'll just go to the doctor." So when we said goodnight for the night, my brother said to my dad, "Okay, good night. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Unless, of course, your bowel seize up and you die tonight." And I was on FaceTime like, bro, what are you saying to our dad? But that statement to my father from my brother was like, I guess it was a bell in the head or whatever. And my dad said jokingly, well, if you really think so, I'm gonna go to the emergency room. We didn't want him to go by himself, so he went with his slightly younger brother by 1 year, my Uncle Ronald. We call him RC. Went to the emergency room. And can you believe my dad went there thinking, I'm going to go. They're going to give me something. I got a little constipation, a little indigestion, and I'll be sent home. He was rushed into surgery and ended up spending almost 40 days in the hospital. Wow. And turned out that my father was diagnosed with stage 2 colon cancer. And I remember he had the surgery. And remember, this is a spur of the moment thing. You go to the emergency room. I'm here. And after a couple of days, I don't remember how long from him having the surgery, because it was that night, right? And when he woke up and me being on the phone, being like, what is happening exactly? And I think our parents are used to going through so much in the conversation. It was very light what he was saying. And all of a sudden, my brother, fortunately, I'm the one with no job, no 9 to 5. So it's easy to send me different places. I ended up going to Alabama where my father was. Shout out to St. Vincent Hospital. Happens to also be the hospital where I was born almost 100 years ago. So luckily they had upgraded some stuff, right? Since my birth. But I ended up spending about 30 days in the hospital, sleeping at my father's feet in the hospital room, which for a lot of people was very entertaining, because I had the people's hair with me and we're washing it in the hospital room. And from that, I just didn't do any more business for the year. I didn't come back until New Year's Eve. I went and spent Christmas or Thanksgiving with my mom and my stepfather in Florida. But I told you that whole story because I wasn't doing any business. So the business was paused and has been for really the last 2 years. Well, this year, amped up again in January, all excited to do business. And in February, my cousin passed, right? And that took me for a loop. And I ended up going to see him. And in between that, last August, my aunt passed, right? So I had a lot of angels recruited to the army in heaven, I guess. And I never circled back to ADP. Was not on my mind. As well as I learned while not doing business, which means money's not coming in, Chase has this stipulation. If you have a bank account, a business bank account or a personal account that is negative more than 60 days, it automatically closes the account. So I would say from about May to January of 2024, I didn't think about anything at all. Food wasn't a problem because my dad's house was there and I would go, get food from there. Made friends in the hospital, so people were feeding me. And oddly, the food in the hospital wasn't bad, right? I guess because it's in the South, not really sure. And my bank accounts, all of them closed multiple times because every time it would close from money not being in it, I would just reopen my bank account. And there's a trick to doing that as well. You'd be surprised how many people have had a bank account close and be told by a financial institution they can't get another bank account and open it, and then people flip flop to another institution. You don't have to really do that. We could talk about that another time. But move forward. Now I'm all ready again. It's 2025, ready to do business. Got some new clients. Money goes into my bank account. This was July 3rd. So that's this month, right? I'm all excited. And from that money, I said, I'm going to buy a ticket, go to my aunt's funeral, whatever. And that's July 3rd. And that's the day before 4th of July. So there's a little note in my Chase account that says, hey, funds are on hold. They will be available July 8th. And so I'm thinking, it's 4th of July weekend. 4th of July was on a Friday. So maybe, the funds will go in that Monday or Tuesday. But when people who don't have money starts to come in, we're on it every second, looking at the account. Did it clear? It didn't clear yet. So because I've had this very interesting life for the past 10 years, a lot of people don't know I've been dealing with a very aggressive stalker. So I've learned how to utilize the various services and city agencies that we have here in New York City, because I've had to relocate 24 times since September 26, 2014. This is a lot of times, right? All within the 5 boroughs in Long Island. So now here it is, July, I think 6th or 7th, right? The next Monday or Tuesday. Open up my app, still no money. So now I call Chase, and it turns out that I had it's called a levy. Do you know what a levy is? I pray that you never find out. Levy. There was an institution and a court order that seized my small business account and said, hey, that money that came in, we need you to put a hold on it. And now I've turned into Inspector Gadget, trying to figure out what is going on. And there are all these back offices under the umbrella of Chase. And so it turns out that the New York Department of Labor had put a levy on my account for not filing my business, right? And so I'm like, I wasn't doing business. And so what I learned, which I already knew, right? If you have a corporation, you're required to file quarterly. That's why some people do LLCs. It's more expensive to maintain a corporation in terms of taxation. When you first start or register your business, it's cheaper really to register the LLC, except for in New York State where you also have to publish, and people forget about publishing. That's a requirement for every LLC that's filed. But luckily, having good business sense, techie, and just the desperation of funds, I figured out, you talk to the court levy people. I had no idea the documents that they were talking about. They faxed over the court levy, which was sent in January to New York State. And then in June, it was actually issued and sent to Chase. And I was like, well, I didn't get these documents. I don't know what this is about. And part of why I didn't receive the documents is, and this is actually the first time I think I've talked about it in a while, having this stalking situation. I actually have 2 orders of protection, right? One from IDV, Brooklyn Supreme Court, and the other one from Family Court. And when you have an order of protection, lots of times people have what's called a protected address. So where you live physically is nowhere, right? And that means that your mail tends to go to a alternate address. Sometimes you have only electronic notices, meaning paperless. Well, in this instance, my mail was designated to go to the registered agent for that entity that I have, that corporation. And that was my CPA. But as it would happen, the notices didn't make it to my CPA's office either, right? So in tracking all of that down, there are two alternatives, and we're talking about initially I processed one payroll, and the taxes for that one payroll were probably like $300. But what people don't realize here is what really gets you when you don't file your taxes properly on a corporation or any business in New York State is the penalties and then the interest. And so at this point, it was accruing 99 cents a day from the initial, judgment from the court. There were 5 different orders because you count the quarters from March of 2023 going forward. And what the average person would do when they call and they say, hey, you now owe about $7,000. And in order to remedy this, you need to file your filings for each quarter. Now, when you go back and you file your filings late, there's interest and penalties. But in this instance, I did one payroll and then the business ceased after that. So if you have a great CPA and you also have a little intuitiveness and you talk to people, what I realized the better alternative for me would be to contact ADP and get verification that there was only one payroll process and no business afterwards. So then ADP could mark that March of 2023 payroll as the first and final, and then I could do one or two things. You can protest against the amount that you owe instead of just settling and working out a payment arrangement, right? Or you can simply, with the help of, I don't know the young lady's name that was at the Department of Labor, but I will say that she was a brown girl because I could tell by her tone. And I asked her, she said to me, you know what I think is a better remedy instead of you protesting and doing the 0 filings for each quarter, which my CPA said we're definitely not doing that because we don't want it to appear that it was a late filing, because that means you still have to remedy the late charges and things. So in this instance, I was able to write them a letter and say that my first and final payroll was March of 2023. The business ceased to do business after that fact. I explained the part about my dad and stuff, but they said, you really don't need to do that. You just need to let us know there was no more business, right? They were able to close my ADP payroll account. And let me correct that. They were able to close my Department of Labor account. It wasn't really the ADP, because anytime you have a payroll service and you start payroll, you first create an account with them and then they register, or you register your business with the Department of Labor. Once you register your business with the Department of Labor now sits back and says, okay, where are your taxes? Either quarterly or annually. And so when they close that account retroactively, it automatically gets rid of all the late fees, right? So that's exciting. That took a couple days. So if that happened on the 3rd, the money came out on the 7th. By the 13th or so, I understood what was happening and we were correcting things. Now, here's the part that's antiquated and really made me mad. Also made me cry, right? So anytime you have a garnishment or a levy on your bank account, whether it's a personal bank account or a business bank account, your financial institution instantly seizes your account. The time in which it takes to pass from the seizure to the time in which they start sending out your money is fast, right? So the whole came on the 3rd. By the 7th, they had already taken a check and mailed it to the Department of Labor, right? So now here I am. I've gotten everything straight with the Department of Labor. I don't owe any money at all. And the Department of Labor's protocol or service level agreement is now to send an authorization to release the account, right? And that terminology that's in that boilerplate template simply says, in a very fancy and legal way, that whatever caused the need for the account to be seized and held is no longer in existence, and now you can give the account back. It doesn't speak to whether or not the money needs to go back in or not. right? It just gives you back your account and lets them know don't freeze anything else. So problem number 2 now comes, I'm talking to the Department of Labor. Well, did you all get the money? No, we don't have the money yet. So Chase says, we sent out a paper check on the 7th. So now I have to wait for snail mail for a paper check to get to the Department of Labor, for someone to check the mail, sort the mail, then put it and assign it to whatever agent. So that agent can then open the mail, see there's a check, find the business, read the notes, and be like, oh, she doesn't owe any money. Let me stamp this, return to sender, and send it back to Chase. And then I have to wait for Chase to check the mail, sort the mail, someone to get assigned my paper check, look at my bank account and say, oh, let's deposit these funds back into the bank account, which who knows how long that process is going to take. So for me, I'm saying, oh my goodness, you're telling me I've got to wait another 20 to 30 days before I see this money back into my account. Makes no sense at all in 2025. So the first thing I said was, oh, well, can we just put a stop payment on the check? Because that's what you would do if you have a check that doesn't need to go anywhere. And so Chase says, yeah, we can. Just have the Department of Labor call us and say to put a stop payment on the check. You both know Department of Labor is not calling anywhere, right? That's not part of their service level agreement. And I can get it because what Chase, I don't know what they charge now. The last time I did a stop payment on a check, it was like $20, $25. So I know the Department of Labor is not trying to spend $25 or $10 or $1 to stop a payment. So now I'm writing letters to everybody, and I'm going to write letters to my assembly member, because what it sounds like to me is there needs to be new litigation to talk about the process that New York State has when it has levied someone's account, taken money, and now it's time to return it. I just want them to give back the money with the same haste and efficiency in which they take it, right? So that was one thing I learned, which is a great teaching point and a reminder that file your taxes quarterly and make sure to tie all your bows and cross your I's and those things. But I think the average person would have been more like, oh my gosh, how much money do I owe? How do I do a payment arrangement? Because a single focus is just getting the account access back up, and also thinking about other money that's coming in, trying to stop those transactions before they hit that account, right? Because that gets seized as well, right? So that was one element of my week that was kind of crazy, right? So, that was kind of crazy. And then on top of that, I did what's called a credit card transaction for one of my clients, right? So lots of times small businesses have a difficult time with what's called merchant services. So let's imagine Salon Leahing, when people come in, wants to be able to take every form of legitimate currency it can accept in order to do business, right? So you're talking about cash, maybe Cash App, Zelle, PayPal, Venmo. But the most impressive way to assimilate a big corporation is the ability to accept credit cards, right? And so businesses have things like Quick Accept, and Quick Accept allows you to take purchases from credit cards without actually having a big enhanced point of sale system. And the ways that you do that, you can get like a little Square object. I think it's Square that provides it, right? Or you can get from your financial institution a device that is literally connected for Visa, MasterCard, where you can tap or you can swipe, right? Or another fancy way when you're doing business with people who are outside of your touch is to simply send a credit card link, right? It's a link directly from your bank. They click on the link. You've already programmed with the company name, the dollar amount, and then they enter in their credit card information on their end, and you get the money back. Here's the problem. And I'm just speaking about Chase and what I've learned, right? So Chase has a back-end internal department that's called WePay, right? And so WePay is part of the fraud alert, high risk kind of systems that works in the back. When a transaction comes in, they look at that transaction to determine how high is the risk that this might be a chargeback. Because I don't know if you guys are familiar. Um, I moved to New York in the early 2000s or late 1990s, right? And I watched the transition of small businesses doing a lot of business, having a lot of people with money, because you went through 2000 when money was really flowing, especially for people like me who worked in tech. And then around 2004, I would say to 2008, it seemed to me I was introduced to the term scammer and swipers. People who would do a lot of credit card fraud. And I don't know if you're familiar with chargebacks, right? So people who legitimately will go into a small business or corporation, make a purchase, buy a product, and then try to return the product. Or someone who goes into a restaurant, sits down, has a restaurant, uses a credit card, comes in, gets their hair done, uses a credit card, gets a barber cut, and then next thing you know, within a couple of days, you're getting a chargeback. And so depending on if you have like Diners Club or Amex or Visa, MasterCard, at one point there were different kind of policies. They just automatically gave the consumer back the money. So imagine you're a small business, you do an X amount of dollars a day, you're all excited, and then the next day you come in and the person that just sat in your restaurant and had a steak is now saying it wasn't them, right? The credit card gives the money back. So that's what's a chargeback. And my understanding, which I was educated this week, because I did a credit card transaction using a link, it goes through extra scrutiny because the person doesn't have to tap the card. They're typing in numbers, right? And so I don't know what proprietized algorithm they have that looks at a situation and says, this card transaction and this account has this probability that this is going to be a chargeback within the next 120 days. And because of the way credit card laws work, they have to give that money back. As a matter of fact, that is why I do not use PayPal for my services with any of my small businesses. During the pandemic, I provided marketing services to a small business owner who looked like me. So I felt really safe. It was $1,000 something, delivered the services. And a month later, I didn't even notice until I got an alert when my PayPal account was being closed. That person had did a chargeback with PayPal. And PayPal very easily gives back the money. And you have to respond within a certain amount of time in order to say, hey, this is really my money. Credit cards work the same way. And so I will never use PayPal again. As a matter of fact, I need to sue that person because it's still within, well, it's actually later than 2 years, but I'll find something else to sue them for. So just saying, those are things that you need to learn. And with the quick accept, what happened, I did a transaction yesterday and the client is on the other end, excited. They paid for their service. They're ready to do business. And I'm looking at my account like, I don't see it, right? And so when I call Chase, and on their end, it says pending. And that money has come out of their availability, right? And so I speak to Chase. I'm introduced to this WePay process. And what's interesting about WePay, you can't talk to them. Like, you can't talk to them on the phone. They direct you to a URL. There's a sequence of steps that you go through to put in an appeal, because it automatically closes your quick accept account. You cannot take any more transactions. And it doesn't mean that you're untrustworthy. It doesn't mean that your potential client is untrustworthy. It just means you're not using credit cards today. And that money just sits there. And so they either release the transaction and can return it back to the proposed client, or sometimes they'll say, hey, we're going to hold on to this money up to 120 days. If it doesn't get charged back, we're going to release the money into your account. Yeah, I learned that too. I learned that 2 months ago because I did a transaction. I was doing a collaboration with another small business. The service that needed to be paid for was a service that I was rendering. Person wanted to register a business with New York State. I'm a registered agent with the state. So that's a service that I was doing along with Microsoft. I keep saying Microsoft. I must need to go back to my corporate life with minority certification. And the person that I was speaking to gave me their name, their business name, and their email address. I sent them a credit card link in order to pay for their service based on the information that they gave me. That person entered their credit card information and it was processed. Money came out of the account that they paid with. I didn't see any money on my end, over $1,000, right? And when I spoke to WePay, I went through the steps that I told you. I provided the information and they came back and they said, we are not going to reopen your account and we deem this a fraudulent transaction. So you know what it turned out? I was like, oh, no. Where's your supervisor? Let's take this up a step, right? It turns out that the person who I did not know, right? Because this is a collaborative partnership between me and another company, and we're doing the service to this person. This person was presenting himself as a business owner, but he was using a friend's credit card to make the payment because he didn't have any money. And because technically there was money on the card that he had, which a lady told him he could use. But when Chase processed the account, processed the transaction, I gave them his name, his business name, his email address, and his phone number that went with his business. So on the back end, the reason why people say it's important to make sure that your small business is in good standing, there are all types of things that happen, right? They're checks and balances. So this, in the back end, in the fraud department, they're looking at the information I provided for the transaction versus the information that's attached to that credit card, right? And so that information attached to that credit card said, well, his name is John Doe, but I see Jane Doe who lives in New Orleans, and this phone number and this address is from someone in Connecticut. That looked like fraud, right? And so for that, it closed my quick accept on my other business account. And then you have to wait X amount of months before they allow you to open up another account.
Wow, that's an ordeal.
Yeah. And small businesses, especially mine right now, I don't have extra dollars and cents to do things with. And it's a crippling feeling. And it's also a little bit embarrassing if you don't understand the process, right? Like there's a woman who lived in my building who has a small business, and she had not had a bank account in 7 years when I met her. She went through a bad divorce. The ex-husband did some fraudulent stuff with Chase. And when you write bad checks and you overdraw accounts and you do all kinds of stuff, or you walk away from bank accounts and you process a lot of checks, your name and your social goes into a list, right? It's a check system. And in the back of that check system, whenever you try to open up another bank account, it pulls up your information. It says, not today, right? So she hadn't had a bank account in like 7 years. And so I kept saying to her for at least a year, let me help you open up a bank account in your name, right? So you don't have to rely on somebody else. Oh, it's not gonna work, Donnatella, it's not gonna work. Finally, one day I said, come with me to Chase. A lot of people don't like Chase because Chase has a lot of fees. I love Chase, except for those times when I don't have money, right? They do have a lot of fees. As a matter of fact, during the pandemic, they made billions of dollars in fees. And then it came out, I don't know if you all heard, it was such a big thing that Chase started doing like giving back fees. So for all you all who have, a pinch and a penny, if you receive an insufficient funds fee from Chase, you can reverse, I think it is 4 or 5 of them a year. All you have to do is call Chase and ask them to refund this insufficient fund fees. So the call center on the phone, I think they can do 3. And if you go into the branch, they can do up to 2, right? Only people who are fighting for $1 know that. Otherwise, because it's $34 per each insufficient funds fee. That adds up.
And it does. It does.
That adds up. I know. But, that's just the things that I'm telling you. That's what my week was about, fighting for $1, right? And it's important information to know. And I feel like if more of us share our real life scenarios, like I'm not embarrassed to say that, I have tried to restart my small businesses 3, 4, 5 times in the last 2 years, because simultaneously I also got an award in April for generating 4.3 million. That didn't come into my pocket, but I coming out of the pandemic and having a father who was battling colon cancer, my mom is a breast cancer survivor, having family members who passed, I made this weird kind of pact with God to like not take any of my family members during the pandemic. So I didn't charge for my services, especially because there were so many people robbing people during the pandemic, charging 30% to do PPP or COVID EIDL or any of the grants, and people still not getting their money, right?
Well, you do have a business. I'm glad that you're up and running your business.
Yeah. Like a lot of small business, we're running to get the next customer, right?
So tell us, how could people get in touch with you in terms of small business?
Well, in terms of small business services,
right?
It's very easy. So my small business name is MyHungryWorld, which is one word. And what's great about the way Miss Catherine set up this live, it's right in the title, and it speaks to branding. So if you Google MyHungryWorld as one word, even if it's separate, I think you're more than likely going to see images of myself, right? Because even when I was heavy in corporate America, I worked in tech, and I understand SEO, search engine optimization, right? So you want, whenever someone types a keyword that has anything to do with you, your platform, a product or service, that in Google, you come up on like the first or second page, right? So I'm on, whether I use it or not, I create the handle. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, which is now X, TikTok, Tumblr, Pinterest, Snapchat. There's a new thing that everybody's doing. It's orange in color. Stack. I can't think of the name of it. Can't think of the name. It's Stack something. Whatever it is, I'm on it. Substack. Yes, ma'am. Substack. I created my Substack account. And today I watched my first live on Substack. So the idea is, and what's brilliant about New York, and I think me as a person, I know corporate people, I know shady people. So I know how to protect myself, my family members. And when I say shady, one of the things that I used to do, which I still could do, I help people who have been incarcerated, who have felonies. I help them get felonies off of their record. I'm a true believer that a lot of people are repeat offenders for the simplest of reasons, right? So if you go to jail, and before you went to jail, you were making fast money or a lot of money. When you come out of jail and you have your civil liberties taken away and you can't get a job, you can't find a place to live, you can't get any food, you have to survive. So more than likely, if someone is not going to give you a job, you're going to go back to your old patterns of trying to find a way to support yourself. But if you can find a process, and it depends on what crime you were convicted of, how long of a time has passed since your conviction and you got out, and whether or not it was a violent crime, right? That's very important. But there's a simple application. I think it was like $83, and it's called Relief of Disabilities, something of that nature. You fill out that application, and it's not just for in New York. It doesn't have to be something that you did here in New York. One of the people that I helped, he had gotten arrested for like selling weed or something like that in Pennsylvania, in Allentown. If you know anything about Allentown, PA, You guys don't because you're such good people. That was one of the hot spots in Pennsylvania where people would hustle and sell weed and crack and stuff like that, right? So I helped him get rid of his felony, and then he was able to get a good job. Right. So reach out to me, MyHungryWorld, on any of my social media platforms, or you're watching this YouTube, just drop something in the comments, and my friend Duke here will make sure that that we connect.
That is true. That is true. So this week, I have some friends in LA because I used to go to Cal State University, LA. And so I learned that seniors have to be in the house by 9 o'clock.
In LA.
In LA.
Yeah, but they have a curfew on everybody. But seniors especially. And what year is seniors? Because a lot of people aren't really sure. Is it 65 now?
Yes.
I remember when my mom went to IHOP to get her first discount at 55 or something like that. And they said, oh, no, it's no longer 55. You got to be a little bit older, young lady. Wow, at 9 p.m.
At 9 o'clock.
And what time is everybody else have to be in? Well,
they didn't say, they didn't talk about everybody else, but they talked about seniors at... Well, I think this was happening in LA. You know, they have a lot of discomfort in LA, and you'll see the police. What do you call them?
ICE.
Well, ICE is there as well.
The marshals
and the marshals is there as well. But and they're battling back.
Yeah, but I think so. I'm hoping that the curfew for seniors at 9 is part of the overall curfew that's for everyone. So there's a curfew for everyone, but maybe they're saying that maybe there have been instances where the seniors are becoming hurt more so than
I don't know what it is, but it's when you put a curfew on people, that's really deep and interesting. So I've been watching this and I say, wow, this is, I called up LA, have friends there still. And just interesting, 9 o'clock for seniors. And I said, wow.
Yeah. I don't think it's less upsetting if it's part of the curfew that everybody has. Right. And I know that Los Angeles, even during the pandemic, was already having a lot of problems with looting, with shoplifting. My brother is in San Francisco, and one day he told me he was having lunch in a restaurant, and all of a sudden people started yelling, and right outside someone was smashing the glass of a high-end vehicle and grabbing things inside. Because I'm not sure if this law is still in effect, but at one point they passed a law that said that local PD, police in San Francisco, would not be responding to certain types of crime because it was just too many people doing too many things, and they needed to be more focused on other types of crime, like more violence. So if someone is doing a robbery, I guess, a smash and grab, they wouldn't be responding. And at some point, I thought I saw something that said, if you steal something that's, let's say, under $1,000, they're not going to come look for you.
Exactly. That was out there.
I can imagine that happening in New York City.
Well, my cousin went to, for 4th of July, he was in Atlantic City. And he said to me, there was a lot of drones. A lot of drones out there, and they were patrolling. And that was interesting as well.
I think they were probably testing because I went to Atlantic City in March and there were no people. there's like no people in Atlantic City where the hotels were in that time of the month. It actually it looked more dangerous to me just to walk on the sidewalk coming back and forth from your jobs. I mean, that's another debacle and failure that the current president contributed to that he hasn't fixed.
That's a lot. That's a lot. As a matter of fact, Stephen Colbert Colbert. I'm sorry, Colbert. Yeah, he has. His show is ending in May.
Oh, really?
Yeah, show is ending in May.
Well, a lot of free press is ending, or free speech. I think that this administration frowns upon intelligence, history, unity, anything that's outside of, Project 2025, to make it, to put it, briefly. And I think I saw what's about to happen now is the person who was nominated to be a judge, which is a Trumpster, right? And they're not going through the correct protocols. So all the Democrats got up and walked out yesterday, right? It's someone who's being promoted. I think he's like a defense attorney or something for Trump. I can't remember, but he was put forth to be a judge, which is a lifetime seat. Right. And so if you have all these Republicans who are willing to do his bidding, it's a little depressing.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, people have to come together and I guess form a pack. Enough is enough.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, I mean, there's, either you're going to say no to certain things that will affect you, will affect your community. And when it comes to a point where you say, enough is enough, it has to stop.
Well, I think saying no, that goes back to when the 70s, 80s, just say no, that liberation. I think saying no is good, right? Because it's getting you mentally where you need to be. But I think we are approaching a state of no return where there is going to be a civil war, right? Because there's only so much you can do with talking. And in Los Angeles, if things get that aggressive here in New York, which I heard someone just told me today that ICE was in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and Greenpoint's a more affluential area, right? Which brings me to another question. I'll come back to it, but I just think black, brown, green, yellow, purple, anybody who is for freedom of speech or equality or democracy, we're all going to have to band together. And I think a lot of people weren't as focused when they thought, oh, it's only Venezuelan people being taken, and relied on the fact, oh, it's the criminal element. Oh, it's the illegal this, right? But for me, if you pay attention, you'll realize that the majority of people that are being taken aren't criminals, right? And the caveat that this administration is getting away with, under the Democratic Party, at one point, the borders were opened and they said, hey, you can come in, but if you come in, you have to download this app and you have to upload all your documents, tell us where you are. Oh, you have kids that you can't manage. We're going to put them in foster care so that we know where everyone is. You're going to make all of your appointments and we're going to let you legally go through the process. And so these 530,000 people that are being deported who have TPS, those people came in the correct way, obtained asylum, they obtained temporary protective status, they went to their appointments. Those people who are undocumented, who downloaded the app, uploaded all their documentation, made all of their immigration appointments, they were going through the process. And if you look back immediately when the current president took over, within the first 10 or 15 days, the first thing they did was close down the immigration app, right? They closed down the immigration app and then they data warehoused all of that information. They strategically used the executive orders to gain access to certain government agencies where your name, your address, your doctor. And so that is how they're able to show up at people's doctor's appointments. they're sitting in immigration offices, even here in New York, and just waiting for people to show up and taking them. I mean, I've watched some stories on Instagram that literally make me cry. You know, I watched them pull a man from out of his doctor's office and he's crying like a baby. This week, there's a family, I forget which state it's from. The the father was 57 years old, had worked on a farm, something like 40 years, 30 years, something like that. Never been sick in his life. He was detained, pull from the farm, put in a detention center for 25 days. Within the first 15 days, he was in a wheelchair, non-responsive when his sons came to see him. And the 25th day, they got a call and he was gone.
Yeah, that's sad. That's real sad. I think that you know, politicians have to stand up. You know, be it Republican or be it Democrat, they have to step up for the people and not just you know, not just sit back.
But they are. But my frustration, you hear me get excited.
Go ahead.
The Democrats are talking. They're doing what Democrats are supposed to do because they're law-abiding citizens. When you are trying to do things the legal, law-abiding way, and you're doing it up against an entity that doesn't care about the law, that's using executive orders to change the law, you kind of defeat it. Hence why people say it's going to take a civil war. So if the Democrats are saying, which is literally what they did yesterday, hey, you're not supposed to be pushing this person through to get them to be a judge. They're supposed to go through due process. We don't control the Senate or Congress. All you can do is talk, unless you're saying, oh, the Democrats now need to do things the legal way. We need to start going out and kidnapping Republicans, holding them hostage, beating them up, and telling them what to do. Because that's basically, you know, what they're doing.
What is the law then? You know, the law that the country made it up.
No. So the president using the executive orders to go around the law, right? He's the first president to say, hey, I can write more executive orders to tie you up. And because people didn't get out and vote at the local level in the first place, that's the real problem, right? If we had more seats in Congress, Senate, all those different places, then you could argue, right? And then you could block things. But when you don't have the control, you can't block it. So like, I think they said it's going to take up to the 2-year marker when you vote for these other houses in order to make changes, unless they use all this time and they undo everything before then.
I think that as law-abiding citizens, that we're tethered to something. We're tethered to the law. You just can't make your own laws.
You can if you're the president and you use executive orders.
Okay.
That actually is the law.
All right.
Right? He's abusing it, and the people who he's empowered are right there with him. But an interesting point is, hey, hopefully, right? Because he moved toward a dictatorship. And if you look at everything he's doing, it's for him to be a dictatorship, right? They're already, I think Hagseth had on a hat that said Trump for 2028. And he's already said, hey,
I'm the last president.
Well, he said, vote this time and you don't have to vote again. But now there's stories coming up that that Kamala, actually won the election, as they're going back and looking at actual voting. The fact that Elon keeps saying he wouldn't have been president without me. It's like he's basically telling you, hey, here's what I did.
I don't know. It's all kind of weird. I think that I may sound a little weird myself.
Okay. So sounding weird and hearing that Salon Leahing has dismissed their last patron for Friday night, we're going to have to wrap it up and come back next week. And, Miss Catherine's in the back saying time out, right? So this was great.
Excellent. So with that being said, we're going to we're gonna end the show.
Bye, you guys. Salon Leahing, Brooklyn, come out. This is great. I can. It's such a clean place.
All right, all right, all
spraying.
right, Donnatella. All right, thank you.
Happy Friday, everyone.
Thank you. There you go. There you go. Welcome to Salon Leahing. I'm going to ask our Brooklynites to come out and support Salon Leahing, located at 732 Washington Avenue. They're great beauticians, great barbers, and I'm always saying to our viewers, please recycle your money in your own community. Allow that money to circulate, and it helps people. It helps people to grow. It helps educating our children within our community. And so, with that being said, please recycle your money within your community. God bless you. Peace. Donnatella, peace to you.
And Ricky, we miss you. You're not here this week.
Oh, yes, Ricky. We love you, Ricky. Love.